just a reminder that if you prefer not to be on the video, you're very welcome to turn your video off. Okay, so the first part of this part of the evening, I thought we'd devote to the Parami. So the idea being that every week, or every 2 weeks when we meet like this, we discuss the Parami. When we've got 9 weeks, there are 10 Parami, so the possibility we will fit all of them in, hopefully. And it's just an opportunity to just keep the flame of the Parami alive, keep the idea of it alive in your mind, to see what kind of impact it has. So the idea being that we have a challenge, and so for 2 weeks you try to develop the Parami, and then we come back every 2 weeks and we just have a chat about the kinds of adventures we had and the kinds of experiences we had, and most critically, what kind of impact it has on our lives externally, of course, but also, and I want to make this point this evening, the effect it has on our meditations. I made this observation on Wednesday night, and I think it deserves to be repeated for everyone here. The Buddha said, the happy mind concentrates easily. Concentration comes more easily if we're happy. And although we can't guarantee that we're going to be happy when we meditate, if we create the sorts of supporting conditions in our lives that make it more likely that happiness should arise, then happiness will be more likely to arise in our meditations. And I made the point on Wednesday that the reason for sila, for the ethical part of the Buddha's teaching, it has all kinds of benefits, both for us and for others. But the primary and fundamental reason that we practice the Parami is so that happiness arises when we meditate. Because if happiness arises when we meditate, concentration comes more easily, and therefore the possibility of generating insight wisdom comes more easily. And so you have this stack: ethical discipline, mental control, wisdom, or if you prefer, happiness, mindfulness and concentration, insight. And so ultimately, those are the reasons for developing sila, developing the ethical side of the training. So then we have to ask ourselves, well, what are these Parami? So they're all activities or states of mind with which we imbue activities that are steeped in compassion for others. So they're, if you like, they're compassionate, 10 qualities of compassionate activity: generosity, ethical discipline, renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, determination, loving kindness, and equanimity. Okay. So we can look at them in turn, and we can just sort of bring out details, and you can tell your stories about how you found developing the Parami. So let's start with generosity. Why is it such a good idea to be generous? Why did the Buddha make generosity a central theme in his mundane teaching? Open it up a little bit, ask some questions, see what you got. So if you have an observation or you'd like to answer a question, remember to wave your hand, the wave icon, the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. No, not literally wave your hand, Natalie. And yeah, use the raise hand icon and we can discuss it. So just to open it up, why is generosity such a good idea? Why ultimately would generating generosity and being generous, what kind of qualities will it evoke in the person who is generous? That's my question. Natalie, if you'd like to unmute. That's
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Sorry. It's just, yeah. Yes, generosity. I think the Buddha chose it as one of the first parami because it's relatively easy to do for all of us because we're all, familiar with, giving and receiving, and therefore we can build on that, what we've learned so far.
Yeah, very good observation. We all know how to be generous. Sometimes being actually causing ourselves to be generous, pushing through. What might some of the reasons? It's a very good answer, Natalie. Thank you. It is easy. It is easily. It demonstrates the law of action and result very, very easily, just through the process. But what are some of the effects of being generous? Jim, you got your hand up. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, helps us let go of our attachment to our own wealth and connects us with other people and, well, connects us generally to those around us.
How will those around us feel about us if we're generous in the right way? And we'll come on to the right kind of generosity, which sort of like starts to then blend with some of the other parami, because the parami are not separate. It's like a tablecloth. If you pick up one parami and start to develop that, the others start to get developed as well. So I can't remember what my question was. Can you remember what my question was? Salinity has finally come for me.
What would be the effect on the other person? I think is your question. It's a positive action. If it's a genuine gift, the feelings will be positive, and their feelings towards you will be positive.
Exactly. And that's going to make for, because what I want everyone to bear in mind is, how will this result in your meditations? So if you've got good relationships with those around you, family obviously is central to one's happiness or lack thereof, family, but also work colleagues, friends, and so forth. Lynn, Lucy, you got your hand. One of you's got your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I was thinking of the reducing the self-concern because you're thinking of others, you're thinking of what to give or to do for others. So it takes your focus away from yourself for a little bit.
Yes, we obsess about ourselves, don't we?
We do.
And that's when life is at its heaviest. Emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, we're at our heaviest when we obsess about ourselves. And so turning our energy, again, one of the parameters, turning our energies outward, thinking about others. In terms of generosity, it starts to blend with, say, wisdom. You start to think, well, what would be best for this person? Not what I think is best for them, but what is actually best for them. And so, again, it's taking the attention away from ourselves for a little while and placing it upon them. And how can I ease their burden? How can I be of assistance to them? And probably the easiest way is to go and ask them. It's a very easy way to find out what's the best gift to give somebody, just to ask them. But yeah, so there's a serious reduction in self-concern. So what have we discussed so far? So Natalie was talking about the ease with which we can discover the effectiveness of the parami through generosity. That's why the Buddha made such a big thing of it. It leads to connection, and it leads to a reduction in self-concern. And just keep in mind where this is heading in terms of your meditations. Birgit. Hello.
Hello. I think it also helps with the meditation, because if you're sort of generous, then you're more likely to feel at ease with the world around you and be more able to sort of focus on what you're wanting to do with your meditation. Like you don't have to worry about conflicts that you might have otherwise had with other people.
They don't exist.
Mm.
They don't, they're we're creating the conditions for happy meditation. So if you've made connection with other people, you're being generous, you're thinking about them, you're not obsessing about yourself. It means that when you come to meditation, I mean, there's obviously lots of different things we can draw out, and I've got Amy and Peter who want to make a point as well, and I hope I'm not about to make the point you were going to make, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, of course. Why does practicing generosity lead to a sense of trust and faith in life? Yeah. If you know that the law of karma is real, if you know that your actions have results, and generosity is the easiest way of discovering that, you find that life keeps on benevolently bringing things to you that either you need or you want or are happy surprises. And you keep on discovering that life is indeed looking after you. There is this magical, mysterious, reciprocal process at work. It means that you don't have to hang on to your wealth. You don't have to, sort of greedily protect it. You can give in whatever way. And I'm not just talking about financial wealth. I'm talking about wealth in all kinds of different ways. Whatever wealth you have, knowledge, experience, energy, a loving heart, whatever you have to give, if you give that, life returns it abundantly to us. And so what develops is this lovely sense of faith in life. And if you're going to rest in the moment, knowing that you don't know anything and being completely open to whatever wants to come up in meditation, you require the quality of faith. So faith comes from this magical reciprocal arrangement with life, that it does reflect back to us bountifully. Like what we get back, it's not literally if you give someone £10, you'll be given £10 back. It doesn't work in that obvious way. But you find that in magical and non-obvious ways, that life is reciprocating. It's quite wonderful. Amy, hello, nice to see you.
Hi, I'm happy to be able to attend. Yeah, it's actually along the same vein, I think, as Birgit that made earlier. It seemed to be a fairly immediate result. When you give, it feels good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah.
it's
science,
already kind of an immediate happy, immediate return of happiness.
And in addition, Amy, there is a sense of self-worth, not in an arrogant way, not in a conceited way. Look at me, what largesse, what I'm so good to people, that narcissistic thing. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a genuine sense of well-being that comes from knowing that you're a decent human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, yeah. And that absolutely transmits to meditation. So you've got faith, you've got a sense of self-worth as a decent human being. You've got this lovely sense that life is benevolent and returning back to you whatever you give in interesting ways. There's a reduction in self-concern. Peter, what have you got? Nice to see you. Yeah, you're muted at the moment.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Yeah. Hi, yeah, it's nice to see everybody too. Yeah, most of the stuff has been echoed by other people, especially Natalie and Birgit and stuff. I guess thing that occurs to me is when you're generous to people, they automatically trust you a bit more, and they're less suspicious of you, and they think you're an all right person, and so you don't have that barrier between you. And also in oneself, it can lead to feelings of loving kindness, because they're genuinely appreciative of what you've done. Not that you've done it conditionally, so you'll get a good feeling. Well, not intentionally, but yeah,
absolutely intentionally.
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely. And this is a very good point, Peter, that you make, although inadvertently. But it is a very good point. It's like, let's not have a false modesty game here. Like, you're practicing generosity because you know it's in your very own best interest. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm just about to sneeze.
Yeah, and I've had a couple of experiences of that recently. When yesterday I was playing in a band in the gardens at Brighton in a samba band, and a fellow band member lost a necklace, and while we were playing with all the instruments and packing up and everything, and I popped down there today, and I said I'd pop down there and see if I could ask around in the lost property office. I mean, I didn't find it, but the woman was really appreciative that I did it. So I kind of went out of my way to go down there where I didn't need to. And later on, I called my mum because she lives in London. I live in Brighton, and I call her every week, and her face just lights up. So I do a kind of video call with her. And, you know, so I'm being generous with my time, and she's quite elderly now, and she loves it. And it always makes me feel elated afterwards. And it's so it's a very pleasant experience, and it adds to a feeling of loving kindness as well.
And do you find, conversely, that if you leave it too long between chats, that what you actually get is a negative stain in the mind?
Yeah, definitely.
And that will affect your ability to meditate.
Yeah.
And it's not to say, well, I mean, there is duty does come into it. So renunciation.
Yeah.
Renouncing your own time to do what you want to do for the sake of somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. That is an aspect of generosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. So another point I have to make about the Parami is to do with another Parami. So we've got generosity, but the other Parami do actually have an effect. One is, for instance, like the moderating force of ethical discipline. So ethics, it comes after generosity in the list. Normally we think of ethical behavior as in keeping the precepts, and absolutely it is. But also there are subtle aspects, and with generosity, one of the subtle aspects is knowing, so wisdom comes into it as well. Why are you being generous? And we've touched on it, that there are different reasons to be generous. And one that I've come up against in the past is where somebody has been generous to me, but as a way to control me. That because this person has been generous to me, it means I'm not allowed to point out errors or faults in that person, or I have to behave in the way that the person wants me to behave. And if I don't, then what comes back to me is, but I've been so generous to you, I've been so kind to you. And that is unethical. Yeah, that's the way people try to gain power over other people. And that's not the purpose of generosity at all. I'm sure we can find other reasons that people are generous, which are less than entirely ethical. And it brings and to get the ethics of this right brings into play another parami, which is the one right at the far end, which is equanimity. And equanimity in this regard is saying, I can give freely without expectation of reward, without even the expectation that someone will even notice that I've been generous, because I know my actions have results. I know I'm doing it with a good heart, and I will be benefited in some way or shape or form through this magical reciprocal arrangement with life. And so it means that you no longer have to, or there is no reason to use generosity as a way of trying to manipulate and control others. So can you see how all these different 10 qualities actually influence one another. Rebecca, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I've got a question about what you were saying about consciously performing an act of generosity because you know that it's going to have a positive result for you.
Everyone,
And
you,
yeah,
absolutely.
because I know I know that my acts of generosity are kind of on a more like on a spectrum, and some of them are more or less self-interested than others. And I know people who are much more generous than me, who I would struggle to say they were doing it because they were sort of doing a kind of calculation's rather a harsh word, but you know, people who don't sort of even follow the way we're looking at it. Someone like my mother, or maybe it's just come from her imbibed Christian training, I don't know, but some people are more generous than me and do it more instinctively, intuitively, without making that calculation.
But wisdom is not the sole province of the Buddha's teaching. Everyone is learning lessons about what leads to happiness and what doesn't. And gradually over time, we adapt and start doing the things that genuinely lead to happiness and stop doing the things that don't. And everyone is absolutely entitled to that journey of discovery, whatever you want to call it. And it's not the Buddha's teaching does not have a monopoly over wisdom. What I would say with the Buddha's teaching, it's explicitly stated that that's the whole point of the teaching. It is a wisdom teaching, and that's the whole point. So in regards to the knowledge that one is performing a wholesome action, it becomes ethically questionable when somebody is using it as a way of signaling their moral virtue. Yeah. So, you get the pop stars and the philanthropists and the whoever who are very overtly so generous, so kind. And you get the sense that and we have to take care with it, because obviously they are kind, they are generous, but you also always get the sense that there is something that's coming along for a ride, that they're not shy at perhaps hoisting their own banner, flying their own flag in regards to their generosity. And so I think that it's just knowing your intentions. We're back to the wisdom parami again. Know your intentions. Why are you doing what you're doing? Would it matter if you perform this deed knowing that it was a good deed, but no one ever found out? Would it matter? Alex, hello. Hey, hello.
Hello. Hi, Paul. Let me unraise my hand. Hold on. Well, so I wanted to ask about what you were talking about, like being like performing generosity because you know it's going to be good for you. Of course, it's better to know. Of course, that's better. It's good. It's better for you to be performing generosity because you know it's going to be good for you. But isn't that also an expression of self-concern? Like, I mean, I find that it's the best generosity is when you just do it because it's right. Like you're in that situation and you have absolutely no self-concern whatsoever. You do it because it's right, and that's it.
Everyone acts in their own best interest. Everyone, even the Buddha, even Gautama acted in what he considered to be his very own best interest, right? So it's just establishing what we mean by what we're saying. So I would say it is vastly more powerful in terms of producing results if the action is performed with the knowledge that my actions have results. It isn't we've got to clearly define the difference between a selfish self-regard and doing what one knows is in one's very own best interest. We're not talking about, and doesn't make me a good person. We're not talking about that. We're talking about an overarching recognition, which is part of our overall purpose in life. So we're following a wisdom teaching, which is saying that in order to meditate successfully, you have to reduce levels of self-concern. We go out into the world and we see that there's a need. We're primed. Hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, you'll all be primed to look for occasions where you can practice generosity. Are we going to do it without referring to any of this? And of course, we're going to refer to it. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, oh, this is an opportunity. Life is now giving me an opportunity to practice generosity. So, all right, I'll help this person. I'll buy them a sandwich. I will, whatever it is. And I do it with the full knowledge that at some point I'll get a result from this. So it's helping me, it's helping my meditation, it's bringing happiness to me in what we've discussed before about I've got a healthy self-image as a decent human being. I've got faith in life that it brings me everything that I need, and I'm willing to reciprocate and give and give and give. And so you get this lovely virtuous loop. So it's not obsessing about self, it's just a recognition that, this is a good thing to do. It's a good thing for me to do in the context, the overarching context of my spiritual path. That's the way to look at it, I think.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Alex. Jason. Hello.
Hi, Paul. Hello. Oh, just put my hand down. No, I was just thinking about how there's nothing wrong with being generous to yourself, and if the way to be as happy as possible is to be generous to others, then your wish for your own happiness and other happiness is great. I mean, that's like the best form of generosity to yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to this metta thing, isn't it? Like people find it difficult to do metta towards themselves as though they're special in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, that's
why
interesting.
not wish the best for yourself? Why not? And if generosity is going to be the thing that's the best for you and others, then it's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer. Thank goodness for that. Okay, could I just ask, when you not to unwave your hand when you start speaking because you disappear and I can't see you.
Oh.
But if you keep the when you for everyone when you do so then I can actually see you talking. It's helpful. But very, very good point, Jason. Yeah. It's like the difference between like overweening obsession with oneself and genuine self-care that knows and understands what brings happiness. There's such vastly different things, and and so we just have to really clearly delineate what we're really talking about there. But very, very good point, Jason. Thank you. Mark, hello.
Hello. One of the things that comes up sometimes when there's an opportunity to be generous is a kind of second guessing and a little bit of overthinking. I suppose mostly if it's an act of generosity which relates to money, I'll be thinking about helping someone out or making some kind of donation or whatever it might be, and I have a sum in my head, and then I'm like, "Oh, is that too much? Is that going to be? Is that not very wise? Am I going to be losing out?" And I read somewhere or heard, I can't remember, to go with that initial idea of sort of follow through with that act, and I guess it's up to each one of us in terms of to judge what is appropriate and what is reckless, but it's just something that yeah, I don't know. It's something that we might want to look out for over the next couple of weeks, where we have this, wonderful intention, then we start maybe second guessing ourselves. Certainly one I will be looking out for.
Wouldn't be the old doubt resurfacing, because it's the fear is this is reckless, but you don't know whether it's a reckless thing. You don't know when you give, you give money to a charity, you don't know where that ends up. I remember when the initial Channel crossing crisis with the refugees took hold. There was a couple of people locally set up a collection centre for donations for the refugees, and so I gave a tent and a sleeping bag, and because I tried camping and realized actually I prefer my bed. It's actually quieter. Anyway, that's by the by. So, it was, I no longer required the tent. I no longer required the sleeping bag, but I was handing it over. In the end, I realized I have no idea who I'm handing this over to. It could be going anywhere. But what's the intention? The intention is, well, it wasn't just giving to get rid of. It was like, oh, I've got these things here. They're worth a bit of money, but actually other people's needs on this occasion is more. I can let go of this, practice renunciation, let go of that camping equipment. So you have to have faith. You have to have faith that your actions are free from anything unskillful, that you're doing it for the right reasons, and that the universe understands that and will reciprocate. If I'd accidentally given, the sleeping bag and tent to, like, I don't know, mercenaries or something, and they were going to use it for illicit deeds, and it's an exaggeration, of course, but nonetheless, it's not my fault. I'm not responsible for their actions, the things that they do with the things that I gave them, because the intention was genuine, and so I think, perhaps, well, it's got to be an experiment. The whole of the Buddha's teaching is like coming from the place of I thought I knew what life was all about, and I thought I understood how it worked, but I'm really, really unhappy. So something's not quite right. So maybe I don't know as much as I think I do, and maybe it's worthwhile putting all this to the test and to experiment. I'm all for experimentation. Let's give it a go. Let's find out what happens if I am a little bit more reckless, and I do give. Of course, you have to be sensible. Don't give more than you have. Don't give more than you can afford to give away. That's, self-care. That's the moderating influence again, the wisdom influence, which is saying don't give everything away, because that's what fools do. And we don't want to be one of those. So keep it keep it in proportion to what you can afford to give, and what you can, say, like when people come on a retreat here, there is a tradition of giving a donation when you come on retreat. It is a donation. It is not paying for services. You don't pay for your retreat. You don't pay for the guidance. You don't pay for the time sat in the shrine room in the chair. You're doing that for free, and you're voluntarily giving a gift, a donation, so that somebody else has the opportunity to follow the way. Somebody else has the opportunity to come on retreat. And so, wait just a second. So what we suggest is there is a suggested figure for a donation, but it needs to be moderated by what somebody can afford. So some people give extraordinarily generously because they can afford to, other people less. But if it's in proportion to what you have to begin with, then nobody loses out, because we don't want to, you can't go so far that you put yourself in jeopardy. Sorry, Mark, you had another one.
Oh, I was just going to add that there's other ways to be generous. We can be generous with our time. We can be generous with our, how we may listen more and speak less, having just talked over you there. We can be more generous by being more patient and more attentive to somebody. So yeah, I guess there's lots of ways we can develop this parami, right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned another one there, patience. So that's very much involved in this whole endeavor as well. So yeah, I think progressively the center will require more help. I don't think it's insulting to either Brother Nigel or Anda or myself to say that we're not getting any younger. And it may very well be in the future that the way we organize retreats means that we have more helpers who come in, who are trained up to be helpers and take on more of the responsibility of setting up the retreats and conducting the retreats, and to ensure that, because, I want people to be able to come on retreat. And if we have more people on retreat, we need more people helping in order to make that happen. The center itself is such a massive opportunity for generating generosity and the results of that generosity. You imagine you're helping other people, allowing other people the opportunity to stay at the center and to practice meditation under proper instruction in order to gain wisdom into the true nature of reality so that they suffer less. It's an absolute. I think people have forgotten just quite how potent the center actually is, as and in terms of helping people and generating massively positive resultants for yourself. Supporting the center in whatever way you can is just hugely beneficial for all concerned. It really is. Peter, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to this. Something popped into my memory of something that happened years ago when I was working in London as a drama facilitator in the evenings, in a really run-down part of London in Peckham, where a lot of the kids were from sink estates and had lots of troubled backgrounds. And I was working with primary school kids and thinking a lot about the teachings of the Buddha at the time. I sort of did a little experiment with them, and I made them all little kind of uniforms, little T-shirts, and I called them the RAC Attack Kids. And RAC stood for Random Acts of Kindness. And we go out with this little group of kids, and I get them to do random acts of kindness for people, but secretly. And the idea was that you didn't get found out. And that might be pushing a button on the Pelican Crossing, or it might be putting a 10p on a table in a restaurant, leaving a tip, and the person didn't even know they'd left it for the waiter, or feeding somebody's dog that was tied out of a shop. And then the way to do it was to secretly do it and not get found out. Because it was me thinking about people that do virtual signal when they give money. And I was playing with the idea, and they would say, well, what's the point of doing it if no one knows? And I said, well, you can imagine in your head that person will suddenly think, I wonder who did that for me, and that would give you a pleasant feeling. And the kids seemed to really latch onto that. It was a really nice idea of doing something for somebody but not getting found out.
Yeah, especially for kids, giving them that added element of secrecy would be fun. Yeah, make it fun. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that.
Interesting. It was an interesting idea of trying to do something for somebody but doing it anonymously. So
yeah, I mean, for us, it doesn't have to be anonymous.
No.
But the equanimity thing is like not caring whether somebody else appreciates it or not. That's the key.
Yeah.
But random acts of kindness, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Be fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Yeah. Sarah, in the dark, you have your hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I've been experiencing some random acts of kindness yesterday, and a stranger answered my advert, I'm looking for a room, etc. And she basically has helped me out in a way which is quite extraordinary for no return, where other people are, asking for ridiculous amounts of money for something that is, exorbitant. And she's agreed, she's just kept offering to store my stuff, and I didn't have to pay her now, and let's see what happens in the future. And and yeah, I probably will stay with her in September for a bit. But the point being, she was a police officer for 40 years. And she's just, we talked about it, and she said, look, this is just what you do. This is what I do. And I recognize she enjoyed it, but it was just, of course, I'm going to offer you this, of course. And it's a habit, and it's a really skillful habit. And sometimes people
That's a very
think,
good thing.
sometimes people think, oh, they're a generous type, or, they find it easy because, and it's because they practice it a lot. And we don't know whether it's this life or former lives. And in her case, yes. And she knew she wanted to be a police officer, apparently, when she was 14. Nothing dramatic happened. She just really loved it, and the service aspect. And she obviously was a very happy, jolly, and upbeat person. And she thought she would go to heaven. I mean, she had that mind state thing that she said to herself, oh yeah, I hope, I think it will happen.
Well, the Buddha did call his mundane teaching the way to heaven.
Yeah.
And, and absolutely it parallels with other religious and spiritual trainings and disciplines. Absolutely. I mean, heaven is just ever decreasing amounts of self-concern. But I very much like your point about, she's, again, it goes back to the point we made at the beginning. Wisdom is not the monopoly of the Buddha's teaching. It's not the monopoly of spiritual teachings. It's people discovering what actually works, what leads to a reduction in levels of, self-hatred, and all those things, and what leads to genuine sense of happiness and ease of being. And so I love the thing about the habit. You create the habit. You recognize that it really works, and it does become addictive, but it's one of those addictions you don't care about. Because life is always proving, and it's proven to you, Sarah. I mean, think about all your service to the center over the years. And then you get this wonderful random act of kindness towards you. And the universe is looking out for you because you look out for the center. That's what I mean. And we can't, one of the beauties is being unable to really nail down the cause and the action and the result. It's just a melting pot. We're just creating supporting conditions that make it more likely for happiness to arise, make it more likely for these wonderful resultants to occur. So thanks, Sarah. Now, other Peter, you have your hand up. Peter DaCosta, is it? Peter Andrews? I don't know which Peter it is.
Sorry, can you hear me?
It's Peter DaCosta. Hello.
Hello.
I can.
Oh. I was wondering about the reciprocal of receiving, being skillful in accepting, so that the person giving gets the maximum benefit, the maximum bang for the buck, as they say. Skillfulness in receiving, it relates to what Sarah's just said. Sarah was beautifully skillful in receiving from her future landlady. I wondered if you could tell us what you think about that.
Peter, you summed it up beautifully. I hadn't thought of it. Thank you very much for that contribution. Yeah, part of giving is knowing how to receive. Absolutely. Yes. I'm in a very unique situation where I'm treated incredibly kindly in all kinds of ways, by people, incredibly generous. And yeah, you have to learn to receive graciously, and it's an art. Again, reducing levels of self-concern help tremendously. And some people think giving is always a downward motion. The movement is always downward, and it's not at all. Give upward. Give up. Give to those to whom you aspire yourself. Those that are skillful in the things that you wish to become skillful in. That's why you take that's why you give little Bobby an apple to give to his teacher at school, because little Bobby is seen by the teacher in a certain light as a consequence of having been given this apple. Bobby does better in his lessons. That's the way it works. So giving upwards is a really good thing as well. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. So part of generosity, therefore, and developing a lessening in self-concern is learning to be gracious to receive from wherever it comes. That's a really good point, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Lucy and Lynn.
Hi,
Hello.
Paul. Me this time.
Yeah.
I just remembered something that I don't know if it was you told me or I read it or heard it somewhere, or I randomly it popped into my head. But on retreat once, it kind of occurred to me that by practicing mindfulness, by just doing this path, basically, it's kind of a very generous act in of itself, because it's ultimately, for example, me on retreat at that moment, I was thinking what I'm basically doing is reducing the amount of ignorance in the world, albeit my tiny little bit of the whole world. It felt to suddenly see it in that way of, oh, actually, if I'm mindful whilst I walk down this corridor, that's a tiny bit of reduction of harm, if you like, or working towards that. And I doing it for other people, I found it really for that retreat or for that day or for that hour or however long it lasted, I can't remember, but it was really quite encouraging to think of it in terms of I'm actually directly helping people by doing this very simple thing that I can do all the time. And actually I'm around people who are doing that too. And then I remember feeling very kind of grateful towards the Sangha as a whole, even just for, it's actually quite a big deal, but even just thinking about the aspect of people just kind of turning up and doing their best for the 40 however many years it's been going on for. I was just seeing it I was seeing the generosity side of just the practice itself, me doing it, but also just being around all the people kind of doing it.
Such a good point. It's such a brilliant point. We're not isolated units, and it's a misinterpretation to believe that meditation and Buddhism is, on the one hand, helping yourself, not caring for other people. It's just so ignorant, that idea. The very act of meditation, if it's being done rightly, if you're not just running away from the world, but if you're truly taking responsibility for your actions in body, speech, and mind and their results, and you are going through this arduous, difficult, painful process of the regular revelation of your own stupidity and then having to deal with it and learn, and all of that, that is an act of generosity to the world. You're absolutely right. Meditation properly done is not selfish. It is entirely about reducing selfishness in ourselves, because you can't reduce selfishness in other people. You can't. So, and yes, it's about community. The Buddha said that good friendship is the whole of the path. good friendship with the lovely. And the reduction in levels of greed, hatred, and delusion within ourselves just makes us better company for people. And you are reducing the savage load of stress and anxiety and depression and all the rest, and worry, because you become a shining light. You become someone who other people want to be around. You become somebody who they can't help themselves when they're around you. They just seem to become happier. I think in Tibetan Buddhism, they have this word bodhicitta. And so as you release all the negativity based on delusion within your own nature, you develop this bodhicitta, this mind which is imbued with wisdom and friendliness and compassion, that isn't out to get you, which isn't secretly making comparisons and judgments and criticisms. You've left all that behind, and there's this lovely sense of openness and ease and well-being. And so people want to be around such people. I don't think you can get more generous than giving up all your selfishness. You just can't. It's just not possible. So yeah, Lucy, keep on repeating that to yourself. keep on generating that sense, because that's a wonderful sense of what you're actually doing, and seeing the generation of mindfulness as an act of generosity itself. Yeah, very good. Peter, you've got your hand up. Is that just you hadn't taken it down, or have you got another observation? Oh yeah, no observation. Well, look, I thought we were going to split this evening up between Parami and any other business, but we seem to have focused entirely on generosity this evening. So, as a final thought, if anyone's got a final thought, then do please put up your hand. But let's give it a go. Peter mentioned random acts of kindness. I think that if you set the intention to meet with opportunities to be generous, then the universe will reflect that, will mirror that, and you will see opportunities. Just see how you go. Let's see what happens over. So let's see where we can find opportunities to be generous, what we kind of go through mentally, or if there's any reluctance, resistance to doing it, or whether it's you find it easy, what kind of reflections that go on during the process of being generous, the intention to be generous, the act of generosity, and then subsequently how you feel about that, and what kind of effect does it have over a couple of weeks? What kind of effect does it start to have on your meditations and your desire, your wish to practice mindfulness? So that's what I think. Any other thoughts? Well, okay then. Let's go with that. It's great seeing you all.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
So we'll be back again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thoroughly enjoyed that.